And now here's part 2 of our episode. Walk is maybe my favorite Foo Fighters song.
It won Best Rock Performance and Best Rock Song
at the Grammys.
At the Grammys.
The Grammys love Foo Fighters, don't they?
They do. I have Grammys they're weird. We could have a whole separate episode about the Grammy Awards.
We might need to do a Grammy special for sure. But they I think it speaks to the commercial appeal of Dave and anything Dave touches, that they love Foo Fighters so much.
But you said studio album, and this is really not a studio album in the conventional sense. It is, or a traditional sense. It's a garage album.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll go back to, I think another reason this goes to 11 is because Dave wrote these songs during the time that they were recording these. So they rehearsed for 3 weeks. They went into his garage, no computer assistance. It's all analog.
Yeah.
He wrote White Limo within a handful of minutes. And so I appreciate it because it's not the overdone, synthesized. Nowadays, I often hear the young musicians, and I always think, am I hearing them or am I hearing the computer voice?
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate about Walk and some of the others.
And to cast aspersions upon you, Dad, but somebody who's not musically trained, when you can sense that something is overproduced, like you say, it's a good indication that maybe there were too many fingers touching that. You know?
Yeah. I'm your Ferris Bueller listener. I never had one lesson.
Should I do a points update?
Yeah, let's do a points update.
Okay. All right. So, listeners, I'm trying this new thing where I don't read the points out as they come along. I just record them so that I don't interrupt the flow of conversation. Let us know in the comments or via email if you like that or not. But anyway, here's an update on points, and there are a lot of them. I gave you 999 points for Walk feeling like the kind of song that you're flipping through the channels and you always stop.
Yeah.
You always stop to see it like a movie.
Sweet.
Like when, Star Wars is on TNT or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And then I gave you 800 points for Mr. with Pat Benatar at the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis. And then Heart in Washmo, Washington, Missouri. I gave you 50 points for talking about the Kardashian servants picking up their Chex Mix when they drop it on the floor at the LAX Admirals Club.
After they stepped on it.
Oh, God.
Their Chex Mix has gold foil on it, so
probably
it might be worth. But it doesn't matter. Whatever. Why are we giving the Kardashians more time?
Let's be honest. They eat Chex Mix, and they eat a lot of Chex Mix.
Everyone eats Chex Mix.
They just don't pick up after themselves.
Truth. Yes. I gave you 1,000 points for Chex Mix at the Admirals Club, and that whole anecdote about Dave at the Admirals Club and that kind of solidifying your respect for him. 700 points for always having to wear a blue suit with a maroon tie when you were working for a named pharmaceutical company that we will leave out for legal purposes.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Early to mid 90s. I gave you 666 points for pot smoking good for nothings, which is what you thought the grunge
degenerates.
Pot smoking good for nothings and degenerates.
Yeah.
Yes, that has been adjusted. 500 points for us being the only podcast that you listen to. Thanks, Dad.
Hell yeah. I'm like, I know these dudes. All right.
1,100 points for blowing out Uncle Ed's speakers.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be pissed.
You probably still owe him for that.
Oh, he'll be pissed. Yeah. He'll be, I knew you did it, you little dick. That's what he'll say.
And that's where we stand, plus the 5.5 Manhattans that you gave Michael for his recap on Foo Fighters.
All right. Sweet.
We're going to get to what your standards for perfection are. But before we get that, if this was a visual medium, you would see that my dad and I are sitting next to each other wearing matching T-shirts right now.
I can confirm that, listeners.
That we purchased at the Foo Fighters concert at Wrigley Field on the north side of Chicago. In what year was that? 2018?
2018.
Yeah. And what do you call this concert, Dad?
It is a best concert ever. And that's a throwback. And that's a shout out to my little sister who we went on the best vacation ever. Well, this was the best concert ever. And with all of its downside, it's the best concert ever.
All right. So the reason this was the best concert ever was because it was you and me going to a concert, and it's not like we didn't want other people to go or anything like that.
No.
But what a special thing to share a Foo Fighters concert, just you and your dad
Yep.
at Wrigley Field. I'm not a Cubs fan,
Awesome.
but I still love Wrigley Field.
Awesome.
The thing that happened that night, though, was a lot of drinking, unfortunately. And we're not promoting binge drinking, but we just got carried away. And
Maybe
we got carried away. We went to some of my favorite bars in Chicago, Local Option right there in Lincoln Park. And then we went to my favorite bar in Chicago, which is Rose's Lounge right there on Lincoln, just north of Wrightwood. And I think it's safe to say that we got wasted. And
wasting light, kind of wasted at the concert. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And was the concert everything you wanted it to be? Do you remember it well enough to know that it was everything you wanted it to be?
The concert, the inebriation happened afterwards.
That's true. At Rose's
for the listeners, because I flew up to Chicago.
You did?
Met you. We had it was the perfect concert because we met in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. We had a shot of Jameson and we had a beer and we had a burger. Mm-hmm. Total guy thing, just let's eat, and a couple of fries and beers and whiskey. And classic Tyler, we're at this place and we got to go to Wrigley. And I said, well, let's get an Uber. And he goes, no, it's just right down the road. Let's get an Uber. No, it's just right down. It's a short distance. Well,
big walker. What can I say?
Yeah, he's a big walker. 5 miles later, whatever, I was dead ass tired. We get to the concert, we post up, we have a couple beers,
couple more.
The concert was incredible. Cheap Trick was their guest.
Yeah,
that was
my God.
Shout out to Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah,
for Cheap Trick.
That was not expected, and it was my first time being born and bred loyal Cardinal fan. My first time being at the new Wrigley and the new.
After they had renovated it.
The village that they have outside. Beautiful.
Right. Built ballpark.
Beautiful. Concert was awesome. It was everything that I had expected. And of course I'm there with my boy. It was great. We had an awesome time. Yep. As it happened, my coworker and her husband, Kevin and Rebecca, just happened to be there. We didn't realize it. They came up from St. Louis. We went out to your stomping ground, Roses,
and Gil Tanner met up with us.
And Gil Tanner was there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was a great night. That makes it the best concert ever.
Yeah.
Okay. Jump on a plane the next morning, mid-morning. Admittedly, I'm a little dehydrated. Okay, just a little bit dehydrated. Flight's easy. Southwest Airlines. It is 38 minutes. It is 38 minutes, probably 45 minutes gate to gate.
Yep.
We're coming in for a landing in St. Louis. It's a beautiful day for flying. I fly all the time. I never have any problems flying. And the next thing I know is I have a woman holding my arm saying, "You're okay, you're okay." And I have another woman rubbing the back of my neck saying, "You're okay, you're okay." Well, I passed out, Michael. I passed out on the plane.
Yeah.
And as we're coming in for landing, my head slams into the woman's seat in front of me, and that got her attention. Here's the crazy thing: the woman sitting next to me is an ER nurse. The woman in front of me is a physician, so I was in good hands, right? I was, they were taking care of me. They put me in an ambulance and took me to the hospital.
Yeah.
And so let me tell you, an ambulance ride is not cheap. Now, having said all of that, and they run all these tests, and it was fine. I just passed out.
Dehydration.
I was dehydrated.
Yeah. What do they call it? A phagal incident? Something like that?
Vagal response. Yeah. It was
response.
It was the.
Oh yeah.
It was the altitude change, and I just passed out, and I guess because of my age, and so I spent a good 4 hours in the emergency room. I had an ambulance ride from St. Louis Airport down to my home hospital here. That's $1,000 right there, just an ambulance ride. So having said all that, I say to Tyler, best damn concert ever. I'd do it again. I'd do the ambulance again. We rocked out to Dave Grohl. We partied with Gil and Rebecca and Kevin. It was the best. I'd do it all over again. Maybe not the ambulance ride.
God love you, Dad. You get a bunch of points for that. Don't worry, you get a bunch of points.
I survived it, man. I'll go back.
You're good. I'd do it again.
You referenced before the break, or maybe it was after, I can't remember this point, the song White Limo from the album. I just wonder, I mean, how that song to me, whenever I hear that, I can hear that Dave Grohl worked with Queens of the Stone Age, because that song could be off of a Queens of the Stone Age album. Right. And so I often feel like Dave Grohl is someone who kind of, like, his influence is just like all people around him kind of like just seep into his music as he makes it. How would you define or describe the Foo Fighters music? Because I have a hard time describing that, actually. What words would you use to describe it?
Well, as I listen to it now, the word grunge and grindy come to mind, because it's that it's really kind of in your gut rhythm that it's hard for me to describe. It's something I feel. It's something I feel when I listen to a Foo Fighters. I never know where the song is going. You know, some people have said, well, they're too pop rocky. They're trying to please everybody. I think it is mainstream rock that, to me, speaks to my generation. It is just a grindy. I love the guitar riffs. I love the drums. I'm concerned, and I don't want to pivot from your question, but I'm concerned of what Foo Fighters will be going forward, because I don't think they'll ever be the same. It's the other reason I think that it was the best concert ever.
Without Taylor, you mean?
Yeah, well, because we've seen them. I mean, at the end of the day, Dave and Pat and all the other members won't be the same. I call it middle rock, because it's not
middle rock.
It's not. You know, it's not light rock, pop rock. I don't think they're pop rock at all. I'm not sure. How do you describe them?
I mean, I think the key element to me that stands out, because I mean, I was re-listening to the album this week, and they are rhythm guitar heavy. And I don't play guitar. I only know how to play the piano, but I just know that there's like a chugga 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 that runs through almost all of their songs. And I'm not sure what the lineup is now. I think they have 3 guitars in their lineup.
They have
maybe three guitars and 1 bass. I mean, when you have that many guitars, it sort of feels like it creates this kind of wall of sound. I mean, they're not known for guitar solos. They're not known for like a song like White Limo, because I mean that kind of sticks out to me as it almost seems like too hard when I think of Foo Fighters. I like the term middle rock that you used. It kind of works.
I mean, is that a term? Is that, or did you just coin that?
I don't know.
Okay, Dad.
It just feels middle of the road for me, because some of these others are. If I ask Spotify to play some Pantera or Godsmack, I'll never hear Foo Fighters.
Right.
But if I listen to, it, because then it goes into Lamb of God and Anthrax.
More metal.
More metal.
Yeah.
And so I have to make sure I'm asking for the right blend.
Yeah.
If I want to hear Foo Fighters type music.
I think most people would use the term middle of the road as a pejorative, though. They would be like, that's not a good thing.
To me, it's it's
a sweet spot.
It is a sweet spot. Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of they're not, I wouldn't call them a remnant of the way rock was, but I'm reading this book right now called Major Labels, A History of Popular Music in 7 Genres by Khalifa Sena. And the whole chapter on rock, he's talking about how it's I mean, we could have a much greater conversation about genres and how they came about. Often they were used for marketing purposes. Often they were used for segregation purposes. But the fact that rock doesn't sound like, there's nothing out there that sounds like rock anymore, and the most played the most popular rock songs today on the radio or on various channels are all songs from the 90s. It's not way more popular than any bands that are out today that might be considered to be rock. In some ways, I think maybe that's why it's a little bit harder to describe or define Foo Fighters, because they represent something from the past that is still sort of staying current, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I believe that's why a band, Tyler's going to laugh when I say this, but Greta Van Fleet, I love her early work. Greta Van Fleet is so popular.
Yeah.
Is because why?
It's a throwback.
She's they sound like.
You said she.
We have a.
She's not a she. She's a group.
It's
to
a
everybody.
group.
Leave it at that.
It's an inside joke. They sound like Led Zeppelin. So those of us guys
almost note for note,
that listen to them, and they're a beautiful group. They sound fantastic. Why do I like them? They sound like Led Zeppelin, and I think you're right. That the what are rock bands now? There are very few that do it for me.
Maybe people really consider Machine Gun Kelly like current rock. Am I wrong in that? I don't really listen to Machine Gun Kelly.
I've only listened to a couple songs because there was one of my students was talking about it one day, and I listened. I don't know if I'd call him rock. Like I don't know what I would call him.
Yeah,
it's
except something
rock.
I don't listen to. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it shares more with Limp Bizkit than it does with.
Well, because we've already had that sort of rap rock phase, right? Like I would say the better if we're saying if we're going to choose a band to represent that, I'd rather say Linkin Park than Limp Bizkit. But
agreed. Yes,
because Fred Durst can go do bad things. I'm
go kick rocks
nice on a podcast. Yeah.
Well, but quite honestly, it's all about the he said, she said.
Tyler, can you take points away for that? You have to take points away for that.
Michael, how could I take points away for that?
You get a bunch. I think you are a biased grader this episode.
He is a biased grader.
I'm going to give him 60 points for the he said, she said bullshit.
All right, but if this were a panel, Paul, if this were a panel, you would have lost points right there.
Yeah, a couple of the panel members would have walked out.
Fair enough.
If you're gonna quote Limp Bizkit, it's got to be break stuff. Like, yeah. Why don't we bring it back to this album and what makes it perfect? Because as you know, we do not define that word for you, so you have to have your own standards when you're deciding on it. So, what were your standards when you arrived at this one?
If I'm Dave Grohl and all the members of Foo Fighters, I don't want to have this music just be important to people right now. I would hope that it would bring joy or meaning to listeners, the same listeners in years forward. And is the reason why. I had another
even relative to their other albums, you're saying?
Even relative to their other albums.
Okay.
And I love all their other albums, but I think the words, the meaning continues to speak to me throughout my years. There were some other albums that I said, yeah, I could put this on the list, guys, but I can't say the same things. Like Queen, The Game, that was hugely important to me as a younger kid, but I haven't listened to it in years.
Yeah.
I think other guests we've had have said similar things too. The fact that it's an album that has to have some staying power, whether it's just that you just keep listening to it for your entire life, or that it does sort of morph as you change in your life. And I mean, with a band like Foo Fighters, who this is their 7th album, they have more after this. I mean, it feels like you can sort of hear where they are in their lives at certain points, with depending on which album you're covering. Yeah. I mean, like that first album, which is basically just Dave Grohl.
Right.
I mean, he's even said it was like he just had these songs and he had to record something after losing, after Nirvana broke up and after losing his friend, and it was just sort of a, hey, I'll just do this thing and I'll play all the instruments because why not? And it has that it has that feel about it, like someone to sort of like like hold themselves in a studio and just recorded it. Whereas some of their later albums feel much more sprawling and much more arena rock.
Yeah, arena rock or Netflix special.
Do you feel like this album has a overall theme? Because I do, but I want to hear what you.
Yeah, it is recovery. It is starting over. It is surviving. It is if you go through a bad breakup, this is the album for you, because you need to listen to this, because by God, you will survive. Listen to this album because it will give you, hey, I'll be okay. I will get through this. Walk is just one example. It's the first one that I think of because, learning to walk again. I don't want to die. I never want to die. I never want to die. But all the other songs talk about, somebody going through something. What about you guys?
I would add death to that. Like, I think there's a conversation about death happening, and like, I think overcoming the fear of death, because I think there's always a preoccupation in art with death, right? That the only reason we make anything is because we die and because we, like want to leave something behind. Maybe there's some theory around that. I don't know, but I definitely see that happen over and over again definitely with Walk, but then also with the song that we will choose as our standout track, me and Michael's standout track. It's also a relevant theme in that. What about you, Michael?
I'm trying to see when his children were born.
Oh, that's a good point.
2006, 2009, and then 2014. So, I mean, I feel like, I mean, it definitely sounds to me like a rock star who is now a parent, like that sort of album.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like there's sort of a tired argument that happens about rock stars when they settle down, that they become less vital. And I find that while I will admit that like one of my favorite bands of all time, which is Pearl Jam, I have not been able to connect to their music for the past decade or so. It doesn't speak to me in the same way. I don't know what that's, I'm not going to attribute that to them settling down or anything like that, because that just seems silly, because there are plenty of artists who have done that and who still are making music that does speak to me. It just feels like they've gone off in a different direction that I'm not as interested in. But this does sound to me like someone who is kind of grappling with that. I mean, I feel like Dave Grohl, for the duration of his life and his career, he is always, even as successful as Foo Fighters is, he is always going to be living in the shadow of Nirvana. Like it's just always something. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I'm sure he's had lots of time to sort of, process his thoughts and feelings about losing, his friend. But I mean, not to segue into something really kind of depressing, but I feel like it's happening to him again right now. He's wrestling with that sort of rock star, family man, what's my public persona, how do I process all of this? Oh, I'm doing this all out in public in front of everyone, and I'm supposed to sing and dance and entertain you in some way. It right. just it feels to me like, even though he's not pouring his heart out the way that some artists might with their lyrics and like very like blunt and cutting, like he's not a Fiona Apple, right? But he's still at least exposing himself and what he's going through his music.
It's like if you lose a coworker at a regular 9-to-5 job, that office is going to be rocked. Everybody's going to be sad that they lost Mary Jane, the receptionist. And here you lose a key member of a band. It's going to change you. Part of me is thankful I got to see them with the way they were, because we got to see Taylor Hawkins do his solo. It was
wicked.
Yeah, it was wicked. It was great. We'll never see it again.
And I think we saw Dave play drums a little bit.
We did
too.
Yep.
It's all a blur.
Mm-hmm.
But
but the guy just said, "That's it. I'm done. Screw this. I've lost 2 close friends. I've got a family. My priorities have changed." I wouldn't be upset at all. I'd hate to see him leave the business, but shit. I mean, losing 2 family members, and you got small kids. You're like, screw this, man. I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, and I feel like, he doesn't owe us anything, right? I mean, we probably feel like he does. It's something, I mean, as you've probably heard on several episodes, and, Tyler and I sort of made a show about it, like this idea of, we're sort of wrestling with this idea that, what is it about rock stars of a certain age and the connection between them making music and their mental health? And how there's often a negative connection there. Is like an inability to process it in some ways, and I don't know why that connection exists, but I wish it wouldn't, or I wish it did not exist, because I feel like it's just I feel like I've got so many names on a tombstone of people who I wish were still around to be making music.
All right, quick question: any skips on this album?
I don't have any skips on this album.
Do you, Michael? Do you have any skips?
I tend to skip over White Limo just because it makes me a little bit angry, because I'm like, this is the Queens of the Stone Age song, and like, keep your Queens of the Stone Age song on the Queens. And I love Queens of the Stone Age. Don't get me wrong, but it's I don't know. It seems out of place.
But you're exactly right. When I listen to it, I'm like, what the hell did this come from? However, knowing that he wrote these songs in a 2 to 3 week time frame, and with the feel and the messaging for all of the other songs, and then all of a sudden White Limo, I think, all right, I'm going to listen to it just because what the hell was he think? What happened on that day
Yeah.
that he wrote that song? Did somebody give him the wrong Starbucks, put Splenda instead of Equal in his coffee, and it pissed him off, and he wrote a white limo. Man.
Okay, Dad. So I think you've made a very strong case, and it's been great to walk along some avenues that I never knew, musical avenues that I never knew about you for the purposes of this podcast. But we're running out of time, and I think it's time we visit the scoreboard to see how your case scored, and see if Wasting Light is indeed a perfect album. I talked about the earlier points before, so I'm just going to tell you about the points I've given since the update.
Yeah.
The most recent points I gave were 80 points for. I want to know, was it Splendor or Equal in that Starbucks that Dave got that day that he wrote White Limo?
Yeah.
Who pissed in your Cheerios, Dave Grohl?
Exactly.
You got 88 points for everything we talked about, and it really deserves more. Let's make it 8,800. 8,800 points for everything we talked about with Taylor and what artists owe us. I think it's a question worth asking ourselves continuously as we listen to music, watch movies, all that. 77 points for mentioning Netflix special rock, because I kind of think that is a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
I had never articulated that before, but I think Netflix special rock, or rock that could be converted into a Netflix special, is something we should dive into that in further episodes, Michael.
It's a new genre.
Yeah, exactly. You got 300 points for coining the term middle rock.
Yeah, nice.
We're going to come back to that for sure.
I like that.
You got 4,000 points for surviving passing out on the airplane after the best concert ever.
4,000 minus 1,000 for the ambulance ride. So
fair enough. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm sure they're still after you for.
I did send a LinkedIn connection to the doctor that took care of me, and she accepted like that day from the hospital. You got to make the connection.
It's all about networking. 700 points for Cheap Trick being the opener. That was great.
Sweet. Yeah.
Go Rockford. We love Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah.
So, Dad, you see the points on the board. We're about to make our assessment. Do you have any closing words you want to say?
What I would say is, and I know several of your previous guests, and so I would ask the Andrews and the Wesleys and the Ashlands and the others to give it a listen, and it will speak to them. And anybody else who's listened to this that hasn't listened to the whole album, you should listen to it, because it will help you out throughout your days.
Yeah. Cool. Well said. So, Michael, you heard my dad's closing argument. Mm-hmm. This is a strong case he's built. What do you say? Mm-hmm. Does Wasting Light by Foo Fighters go all the way to 11? Is it a perfect album?
I'm going to choose to ignore the Limp Bizkit quoting that you did earlier, because, and in my evaluation, because I think that would be that would have lost you some points there. But I do believe the case you have made. I'm a sucker for a personal story that really cements why an album is perfect. So yes, for me, I do declare that Wasting Light goes to 11.
Yes. You did it, Dad.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll be careful with my Limp Bizkit references.
Yeah. As well, you should. You
learned your lesson. Resurgence. Yeah. Maybe it's happening. Maybe it's already happening. Thanks for doing this, Dad.
Hey, it was great. You guys are doing an awesome service to those who are not as musically informed as like me. I'm not musically informed, and I've learned some things. Cool. I've gone back and I've listened to albums, and it's been a joy. So. Keep it up. Keep going.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah,
I love you, man.
Love you too, Michael. You're awesome.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, Michael. What are we leaving our list? What is playing us out? What does playing us out mean? Yeah. What are we playing out on? What is it? We'll do it live. What is our standout track from this album?
We have chosen These Days, which is a track from the middle of the album, which feels like. I mean, I said before we started recording that this song, I hear it differently now that Taylor has passed some of the lyrics within it, but it really, it feels like a trademark Foo Fighters song to me. It feels like it has some real like pathos underneath it, but it also rocks really hard. It's I don't know. To me, it was a clear standout for me that I'm listening to with a different set of ears right now.
For sure. Well, this one is These Days by Foo Fighters. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Rock on.
Bye, everybody.
Mm-hmm.